My badge didn't even beep that morning. Just gave a sad little red blink like the building itself was embarrassed for me. I stood there in front of the glass doors, clutching my thermos like a divorced dad holding on to visitation rights, while our new director strutted past in a Patagonia vest 2 sizes too tight, like an over-caffeinated pelican. Security starts with accountability. He barked to no one in particular, tapping on his Apple Watch like it controlled missiles. What a joke. I'd spent 6 years making sure our infrastructure didn't implode like a soggy waffle, quiet, invisible work. I was the guy who made the pipes run clean so no one had to think about them. You ever flush a toilet and thank the plumber who set the angle of that pipe just right 10 years ago? No, yeah, that's what my job was like. Except the stakes were federal contracts, HIPAA logs, and a server room held together with 3 rolls of Gorilla Tape and my sleep-deprived prayers. Before Captain Optics landed like a frat pledge with a LinkedIn addiction, we ran a tight, if unglamorous, ship, daily backups, redundant access logs, internal pen tests that actually meant something. The sort of boring reliability you only miss once it's gone. I didn't have a big voice in meetings. I didn't need one. My system spoke for me. But then this guy arrives, fresh off a failed IPO, flashing a PowerPoint deck titled Revolutionize Workflow Visibility. He reorganizes teams by which fonts they used in Slack. He makes everyone rename their Git commits to start with emojis. Real Silicon Valley cosplay energy. Cut our documentation time by half and called it Agile Evolution, all while sipping kale protein sludge like it was holy water. He started holding these weekly visibility sessions, aka public floggings. He'd spotlight anyone who didn't hit his arbitrary metrics, usually cooked up the night before on a bar napkin. And if you did your job quietly and correctly, that made you invisible. And visibility in his twisted gospel was the only thing that mattered. Now, before I keep going, quick favor, if you're enjoying this story or just morbidly curious where it's headed, hit that little subscribe button and toss a like. I know, all hate pop-ups, but seriously, it keeps our small team running on cold brew and caffeine-fueled justice. All right, back to the dumpster fire. At first, I thought I could weather it, keep my head down, let the new regime bark itself hoarse while I kept the gears turning. But every week, another corner cut, another process gutted. One engineer broke down crying after being visibility shamed for not joining the director's book club. The book was extreme ownership. By the way, of course it was. Then came the access restructure. No more silos, he said, while funneling everything through a half-baked internal dashboard his cousin's startup had whipped up over a weekend. Suddenly, junior devs had elevated permissions and expired credentials were hanging around like ghosts at a keg party. I flagged it once, got ignored, flagged it again, was told I was resistant to innovation. By the time I noticed a weird behavior in our staging logs, one that could theoretically let anyone with a certain token scrape user data, I knew things were teetering. I didn't panic. I documented it like I always do. Quiet, clean, factual. I ran simulations, captured logs, wrote a 4-paragraph internal memo, CC'd legal and security, and dropped it in the Hash Compliance Watch channel with the subject line, Urgent, Unintended Token Behavior in Access Routing. His reply came 2 hours later. Public channel. 3 words, stay in your lane. No follow-up. No meeting, just a digital middle finger. I stared at the screen for a long moment, heart pounding like a slow drumbeat behind my ears. The comments rolled in, mostly silence, a couple nervous emoji reacts. One person dropped a popcorn gif and then deleted it 5 seconds later. That night, I exported the entire Slack thread and the report to an encrypted drive, marked the files, timestamped everything. Then I poured 2 fingers of bourbon and sat in my garage, listening to the furnace hum. I wasn't mad, not yet, just calibrated. The systems were failing, and not just the digital ones. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, is that my lane ran deeper than any of their ego trenches, and I just started marking the exits. It was a Saturday night, the kind where the silence of the office VPN is louder than any bar fight on Route 23. I'd logged in for a routine audit, just a habit I picked up after one too many unexpected downtimes. My dog was snoring like a congested leaf blower, and my 3rd cup of instant coffee was sweating beside a microwave burrito I had no intention of eating. That's when I saw it. Buried inside a routine staging environment, an innocuous access path meant for dev testing was a token refresh loophole. Under the right circumstances, could escalate privilege without triggering an alert. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't obvious. But if a third-party app knew what to look for, it could potentially impersonate any user session tied to that token for up to 72 hours. Translation? A glorified digital skeleton key to customer data. I didn't panic. I did what I always do, I documented it. Screenshots, logs, a screen recording of the exact moment I triggered the behavior. I wrote a full incident summary in Markdown, 6 pages long with inline comments and references to affected systems. I even ran it through Grammarly so they couldn't claim I was being unclear. I flagged it as CV2 potential unauthorized access vector, tagged the compliance officer, our head of security, and the new director. Then I dropped it in the designated security ops Slack channel with a polite, professional note, flagging a concern from this weekend's audit. Potential issue with refresh token behavior in staging environment. Needs eyes ASAP. Logs and full report linked below. Nothing. 3 hours passed, then 6. Monday morning, 10:42 a.m., he replied, "Stay in your lane, that's it. No context, no questions, no follow-up. Just 3 words in front of 30 people. And because it was Slack, it was permanent. It wasn't a private message, it was public. In front of the CTO, in front of our vendor rep, in front of interns still trying to figure out what VPN meant. Some brown noser reacted with a 100 emoji. Someone else tried to soften the blow with a sad cat gif. I sat at my desk, staring at the thread, my hand hovering over the mouse like it was a detonator. I didn't respond, not because I was afraid, no. I've seen enough back-end fire drills to know fear. This was something colder, something heavier, like watching someone cut the brake lines on a bus full of kids and call it optimizing fuel efficiency. So I did what needed doing. I exported the full Slack thread, complete with timestamps and metadata. I saved the markdown report in 3 separate locations, local, offsite, and one in a private Proton drive. I downloaded access logs from the sandbox environments and zipped them into a secure archive with a checksum. I printed 1 physical copy, because nothing scares a digital narcissist like hard evidence. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was anxious, but because I knew deep in my gut that this wasn't a bug in the system. This was the system. He didn't ignore the flaw because he didn't understand it. He ignored it because he did. A week later, he gave a presentation called Security Through Simplicity. Used words like lean, streamlined, post-redundancy. I watched from the back of the room, heart burning like battery acid. He didn't just step over my report, he danced on it. And the worst part? Nobody said a damn word. I'd become the ghost in the server logs, a relic of old process. To him, I wasn't a senior engineer. I was a warning label he'd already peeled off the toaster. But I wasn't gone, not yet. I was just getting started. 2 days later, I walked into the all-hands like it was just another forced circus. You know the drill. Cheap pastries sweating under plastic wrap, lukewarm coffee in cardboard gallons, and PowerPoint slides no one reads but everyone pretends to understand. He was already up there, pacing like a TED talk reject who thinks charisma is just yelling louder and using your hands more. The topic was visibility and accountability. Of course it was. He started off passive-aggressive, calling out barriers to velocity and legacy mindsets. I half-listened, half-counted how many times he used the word disruption. 7, if you're wondering. Lucky number for gaslighters. Then he clicked to the next slide. A new title appeared, Rogue Agents and Risk. I felt something cold slither into my chest. He stopped pacing, looked right at me through me, then said, "We don't tolerate rogue agents at this company." There was a pause. You could feel the oxygen leave the room. Then he continued, effective immediately. Parting ways with an employee who chose to ignore protocol, bypass leadership, and waste resources investigating non-existent issues. I won't name names, but integrity means staying in your lane. My name was never said, but my face said everything. A beat later, HR stood up. Marcia, who once shared photos of her cats and gave me butterscotch candies during on-call weekends, wouldn't even meet my eyes. "Can you come with me, please?" I stood slowly, still holding my pen like it could write me back into existence. My teammates stared forward like malfunctioning Roombas, eyes glassy, mouths shut. No one blinked. No one breathed. It was like watching my own funeral in real time, except instead of a eulogy, I got a bullet point on a slide titled Risk Reduction. We walked down the hallway. I wasn't handcuffed or shoved, but it felt the same. The silence, the betrayal, the way every click of my boots on the linoleum echoed like a countdown. My desk had already been boxed. They let me take my thermos. Small miracle, I didn't say a word on the way out, didn't flinch. Just nodded once to Marcia as she mumbled, "We'll be in touch with final paperwork." The door shut behind me, the badge deactivated. Just like that, 6 years gone. No cake, no speech, no handshake. Just shame smeared across my back like grease on a shop rag. But shock is a funny thing. It numbs you, you don't scream, you don't cry, you just calculate. By the time I got home, the anger had cooled into something sharper, something surgical. I pulled out the encrypted drive, opened the Slack archive, confirmed every timestamp, created a private report using a whistleblower intake portal I'd only read about in compliance onboarding. The name of the agency. Let's just say they don't appreciate it when customer data floats around unsecured like it's Mardi Gras beads. The site had a very simple form. 1 field for nature of incident, 1 for supporting documentation. I didn't need to dramatize. I uploaded everything, screen recordings, logs, Slack threads, the untouched PDF report I'd sent. I included a cover letter, dry as sandpaper, noting that my report had been ignored and I had since been terminated for escalating it. No adjectives, no accusations, just facts in a row like bullets in a clip. At the end, there was a checkbox. "Do you wish to remain confidential?" I checked yes, then hovered over submit. The cursor blinked. My dog snored. A neighbor's lawnmower coughed to life outside. I clicked. Nothing dramatic happened. No pop-up. no confirmation screen with fireworks, just a message that read, "Your report has been received." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. Then I whispered to no one in particular, "Let's see how fast your lane crashes, asshole." Weeks crawled by like a spider with a limp. At first, I checked my email every few hours, even though I knew better. The agency wouldn't respond, not directly, not to someone ticking the confidential box. But still, I kept refreshing like an addict, hoping their dealer changed their mind. Nothing. No knock on the director's door. No federal tsunami, just silence. Meanwhile, the company carried on like nothing happened. I didn't hear it from them, of course, but in exile you develop new senses. A coworker I used to share weekend rotations with pinged me from a burner Gmail. "Hey, they patched something in staging. No changelog, no notes." Another sent a screenshot. Just the corner of a Slack message, timestamp blurred out. "Great work last sprint. Our access systems are now operating with record stability. Let's keep that momentum going." Signed, Captain Optics himself, so that was it. They closed the hole. Quietly, didn't log it, didn't notify vendors, didn't report the vulnerability to the Security Council we were supposed to stay in compliance with. Just wiped their hands and slapped a gold star on the whole damn thing like a toddler who finally peed in the right direction. And now he was bragging. Bragging. New policy docs went out company-wide. Security is everyone's responsibility. He even held a fireside Slack chat where he answered softball questions about our recent audit successes. Someone tossed him a question about rogue behavior, and I shit you not. He replied, "It's critical to neutralize disruption before it infects the culture." Neutralize like I was a virus. I stared at that line for a long time. The word infects did something to me, like a firework gone sideways in your gut, but I didn't reply. I didn't out the people who forwarded it. They were risking plenty just by sending me these whispers through the cracks. One even apologized mid-message, "Sorry, just wanted you to know, we miss you." That was messed up. Typed a reply, deleted it, typed another, deleted again. Eventually just sent, "Keep backups." Always, I wasn't angry, not really. Anger's a sharp flame, it burns out. This was slower, hotter, like standing too close to a space heater that's warping the walls. I started checking LinkedIn again. He'd updated his headline, "Driving Transformational Security Culture." Pinned post was him standing in front of a server rack like he knew what half the blinking lights meant. He was holding a Yeti mug and grinning like a man who thinks compliance is just a fancier word for optional. Every like on that post made my jaw clench. I recognized the names. One of them used to cry during production outages. Another used to beg me to explain how 2FA tokens worked because she didn't want to look dumb in front of him. And now, they were clapping for him like trained seals, because he survived the news cycle. Because the director who fired me was now the hero who streamlined access paths. Disbelief morphed into something colder. I opened my encrypted archive again, reviewed the files. They were still there, of course, still dated, still flawless, still mine. That night, I got a call from my dad. He asked how I was holding up. I lied and said fine. We talked about his tomatoes, about how his garage door squeaks again. I didn't tell him that the people who wronged me were thriving or pretending to. I didn't tell him about the dreams where I walked back into the office and just pulled the fire alarm mid-sprint demo. I didn't tell him about the way I kept watching their job listings, half hoping they'd advertise for another me and wondering if anyone would apply. I just said I'm laying low, letting the wind shift, because I wasn't done. Not yet. I was still in the game. Just moved to a different layer of the stack. And when the crash came, I'd make sure it wasn't just felt. It'd be logged. I was brushing my teeth when the press release dropped. Saw it in my Google Alert headline first. Company secures $14M federal contract for cloud infrastructure modernization. I didn't even finish rinsing. Just stood there, toothbrush hanging like a broken antenna, foam dripping onto my shirt. Federal, contract, cloud infrastructure. My stomach did that thing where it folds inward like a paper fortune teller, cold and slow. See, when you sell cloud services to a federal agency, there's a whole damn jungle of compliance you have to machete through. FedRAMP, FISMA, data residency guarantees, system of record disclosures. And buried in all of that is one poisonous little clause. You must disclose known security vulnerabilities prior to contract initiation. Known, they knew, I told them. They fired me. I spent the next hour reading every line of the release. There it was in black and white, end-to-end compliance architecture. Zero trust design, bulletproof access controls. I almost choked on my coffee. And then, because the devil has a sense of humor, I saw it. The company's own lawyer, the same guy who once told me proactive silence can be legally strategic, had posted a selfie on LinkedIn holding the contract binder like it was a newborn. Proud to announce our latest partnership. Bulletproof compliance isn't a buzzword, it's our baseline, bulletproof. They'd built the whole damn lie on my silence and assumed I'd stay buried under the wreckage. I didn't scream. I didn't punch drywall. I just stared out the window while my dog whined for breakfast. The sky looked normal. Birds still chirped. But in my head, everything was burning. I opened the secure portal again, pulled up the original report, attached the press release as Exhibit B, linked to the LinkedIn post, archived it, screen capped it, wrote a short professional summary. Company has now entered into a federal contract wherein non-disclosure of a known vulnerability may constitute material misrepresentation. Previous documentation attached. See Exhibit C for claim of bulletproof compliance from company's legal representative. I paused, reread it twice, then clicked Submit Update. That's how you do it. You don't shout. You don't threaten, you document. Later that afternoon, I got a call from a recruiter, some fintech startup looking for security-first infrastructure experts. I told her I wasn't ready, not because I couldn't do the work, but because I wasn't done cleaning up someone else's mess yet. The next morning, someone from my old team posted a celebratory update. Big win for the company. Proud to be part of something that matters. I didn't judge him. We all play survival games when the floor turns to lava. But it made something settle in my gut. They still thought they were safe. That night, I made a list. Not of people, not of enemies, just facts, timestamps, gaps, contradictions, a trail. And at the top of that list, in red ink, contract date 14 days ago, which meant if federal investigators did what they usually do, the 30-day audit window had already opened. I just didn't know they were being watched yet, but they would. The email hit my inbox at 2:11 a.m. No subject, no body. Just an attachment labeled Session Behavior 1, PNG. I opened it half asleep, thinking maybe it was spam or some old log I'd forwarded to myself. But the second I saw the layout of the dashboard, our dashboard, I sat bolt upright like someone stuck a defibrillator to my ribs. It was real. The screenshot showed the staging access panel. Same rogue session behavior I'd flagged weeks ago. Same orphan tokens. But this time, the context was even worse. The timestamps had overlapping access keys. 2 identities, 1 session ID. Someone inside had been poking around and caught the system red-handed pretending nothing was wrong. Then another email came. Same sender, blank, attachment, token expiry behavior final JPG. This one had annotations. It highlighted the exact refresh pattern I'd written about. The flaw wasn't gone, it was buried. The UI had changed, but the guts underneath still bled when poked, like repainting a cracked wall and hoping the mold doesn't notice. But here's the kicker, I didn't send these. I didn't leak anything, which meant someone else inside had finally opened their eyes, and they were mad. By noon that day, I'd gotten 2 more screenshots and a PDF labeled, how the patch was fake PDF. It broke down the changelog from the supposed fix sprint. Turns out they just disabled the debug path visually. The core logic was still active, just hidden behind a new conditional comment. That's like closing a vault by hanging a poster over the hole. I didn't reply, didn't acknowledge receipt. Just archived and backed it all up, 2 copies, 1 offsite. Later that afternoon, a blip hit Reddit, buried in /r/sysadmin. Some throwaway account posted a rant about management hiding refresh logic for the sake of compliance optics. It didn't name names, but the phrasing, the structure, I recognized the voice. A former backend dev who used to sit near me, quiet guy, knew his way around OAuth like it was his native language. People were waking up. Then it happened. A client, mid-size healthcare vendor, one of our early adopters, flagged unusual activity in their access logs. Said their service tokens had been hit twice from different IPs within 30 seconds, and the user wasn't even logged in. They raised a formal concern, escalated it through the vendor liaison portal. How did I find out? Someone screenshotted the internal Jira ticket and sent it to me from a Proton Mail burner. The subject line just said, "They know?" My heart was beating out Morse code. I wasn't alone in the shadows anymore. There were whispers now. Echoes, but of course, leadership didn't flinch. They hosted a company-wide AMA that Friday. He, our director, smiled like a cruise ship performer and said, "There are always anomalies during growth. Our systems remain best in class." Someone asked directly, was the reported session behavior related to recent architectural changes? His answer, a shrug, no system is perfect. But we're proud of our visibility posture. Visibility posture. That man could turn lies into LinkedIn bullets. After the AMA, he posted a selfie. Again, caption, leadership is listening. The next day, I got a message from a former intern. Just 5 words, you were right, it's worse. That one hit harder than the leaks, because I remembered him, wide-eyed, jittery, scared to commit code without a second opinion. I trained him on how to validate session headers without triggering failsafes. He used to ask why we did things a certain way. I told him because it's how the system doesn't fall apart. Now the system was falling apart, and the cover-up was coming apart with it. The tension wasn't just in me anymore. It was in the walls, the messages, the breathing of that whole building. And somewhere, behind a chain of untraceable emails, someone else was now watching the fire spread. The phone buzzed at 6:17 a.m., a quiet, insistent hum against the nightstand that jolted me awake like a cattle prod. No one calls me that early unless someone's dead or something's burning. I squinted through half a crusted eyelid at the screen. Unknown number. Could have ignored it, should have probably, but something in my gut said answer. Hello? There was a pause, half a breath. Then a man's voice, measured, dry as legal parchment. Mr. Miller, speaking. This is Agent Connolly. I'm with the Federal Contract Integrity Division. We've reviewed your submitted disclosures regarding your former employer's infrastructure practices. Silence again, not the kind that waits for a thank you, the kind that lets implications simmer. I sat up, wiped my mouth, heartbeat pounding in my neck. Okay, we're moving forward, that's all he said. He didn't ask for more info, didn't tell me what came next, just that. The kind of tone that tells you you're not hallucinating anymore. The house you warned them was on fire, it's finally showing smoke. He hung up without pleasantries. Just click, like flipping a breaker. I sat there for a minute in my crumpled t-shirt, surrounded by half-read books and old iced coffee cups, and tried to feel something. Relief? Vindication? All I felt was the humming buzz of adrenaline soaking into my bones like motor oil into pavement. I dressed in silence, poured dog food, pet my mutt on the head twice. He looked at me like he knew something had shifted. Then I walked 2 blocks to a dingy little coffee shop that used to serve as my escape during system outages. Same dusty chalkboard menu, same overqualified barista with a degree in existential poetry. Ordered black coffee, sat by the window, and opened LinkedIn. I didn't expect fireworks. I wasn't hoping for public meltdowns, but I was watching, closely, patterns, phrasing, timing. I knew how this would move, first quiet confusion, then legalese-flavored deflection, and finally the stench of panic thinly veiled as corporate optimism. An hour later, the first crack appeared. A product manager from my old team posted, "Reminder, if you're unsure about documentation scope, ask questions early." No shame in clarifying lanes. I snorted into my coffee. Clarifying lanes. We're already feeling the heat. That phrasing didn't happen in a vacuum. 20 minutes after that, someone updated their job title to seeking new opportunities. I recognized the name, a junior compliance officer. She was smart, stayed quiet, probably saw something and wanted out before the fallout became radioactive. Then came the message requests, not from legal, not from agents, just people, quiet ones. Names I hadn't heard in months. Are you okay? Heard rumors, thought of you. Thank you for what you did. I didn't reply, not yet. Instead, I opened the internal news blog I still had bookmarked, one of the few public URLs that hadn't been locked down. They'd posted an update. External auditors will be visiting HQ this week to conduct a compliance review. Please ensure documentation is updated and accessible. Translation? They were bracing for impact. My hands were trembling now, but not from fear. It was the slow thaw of suppressed justice. The return of motion after weeks frozen in dread. Outside, the sky was shifting from gray to pale orange. Inside the coffee shop, a couple laughed over a shared scone. Life apparently continued, and me? I smiled, not big, not theatrical. Just the tight, exhausted grin of someone who finally saw the wheels start to turn. Not because he screamed, not because he begged, but because he documented. Because he never stopped watching. And now, someone else was watching too. At exactly 9:02 a.m., they showed up, 3 black sedans rolling into the parking lot like Judgment Day in business casual. No sirens, no badges flashed at the door. Just quiet suits, straight backs, and the kind of expressions that make your HR director forget how vowels work. They didn't ask for permission. Informed reception that they were there under Federal Contract Audit Authority and would be reviewing compliance documentation and infrastructure access logs. One of them handed over a sealed envelope. Another produced a portable scanner. The third pulled out a list, names, dates, systems, and somewhere in the heart of the building, my name was on every single one of those pages. Within 10 minutes, the panic spread like black mold in a broken HVAC system. The executive assistant sent a company-wide Slack. Per legal's request, please refrain from deleting or altering any documentation effective immediately. Which, if you know corporate speak, is the equivalent of the wolves are inside and they're hungry. By 9:30, legal had sealed the big conference room. The GC, general counsel, top of the company's legal food chain, called an emergency meeting. No agenda. No slides, just sweaty silence and the sound of filtered air gasping through ceiling vents. The director, the one who told me to stay in my lane, sat there with his shirt collar misaligned and his usual smug grin nowhere in sight. His voice cracked the second he opened his mouth. They didn't notify us. This is procedural, right? Routine check. The GC didn't answer. He just pulled a printout from a manila folder. My report, 6 pages, clean, numbered, timestamped. And he pulled another sheet. A single Slack message, stay in your lane. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He read it out loud like it was an obituary for plausible deniability, and then he stopped. Mid-sentence, the breathing changed. You ever hear a grown man realize, viscerally, that he's standing on a trapdoor with the hinges already broken? It sounds like a half-swallowed cough wrapped in disbelief. He turned to the director and said it flat. No emotion. Just deadly, surgical clarity. You put that in writing? No one moved. Even the junior counsel stopped typing. The director blinked like a man trying to reboot his brain. It wasn't meant like that. He was overstepping. It wasn't a real issue, but the GC wasn't listening anymore. He was pulling up the NDA archive, searching for language. You could see the internal shift, the legal equivalent of someone drawing chalk around a corpse. Outside the room, agents were already downloading log histories, server traces, user access audits. A systems engineer was crying in the break room. Another one was scrubbing his LinkedIn profile, quietly removing the phrase compliance enthusiast. At 10:11 a.m., Someone forwarded me a screenshot, a whisper like all the others. They're reading your report out loud. Every single line. I stared at that message for a long time. The unease I'd carried for weeks, the gnawing tension. It wasn't mine anymore. It had shifted, jumped ship, crawled up the spine of the very people who told me I was the problem. They thought I was a risk. They didn't realize I was the receipt. And now, they were stuck explaining to federal auditors why they silenced the only guy who told the truth. By noon, I knew what was coming, not justice. Consequences. The memo leaked before lunch. Preliminary findings confirm a non-disclosed vulnerability was active in a production-adjacent environment during contract acquisition. Federal compliance breach under Section 9.14b. Pending full investigation, Director Redacted has been placed on administrative leave. No name, just Director. But anyone with a company Slack login and a functioning memory knew exactly who that was. The fire didn't rage. It spread quietly, like carbon monoxide. One minute, people were sipping oat milk lattes and pretending to finish Jira tickets. The next, legal was scrubbing SharePoint permissions, and our vendor dashboard was flickering with paused by client banners like blood blooming through gauze. By 2:40 p.m., 3 major clients had pulled the brakes. Not cancellations yet, but official pause orders pending internal audit reconciliation. That's corporate for, we don't trust you anymore. Your director just got frog-marched out of the building with his whiteboard still full of buzzwords. Then came the board alert. Emergency session scheduled to discuss leadership continuity and contractual exposure. Translation, we gave this clown a megaphone, and now we need a mop and a scapegoat. I watched it all unfold from the same coffee shop, nursing the same black coffee, wearing the same hoodie I'd been fired in 6 weeks earlier. Not that anyone noticed. The barista still called me quiet guy. He didn't know he was serving espresso to the ghost who pulled the pin. My name never appeared in any Slack message, press release, or tweet. Not a whisper on LinkedIn. But a friend of a friend who still sat on legal's Zoom calls sent me the real gem. A federal summary document, dry as desert sand. Had this line in Section 3, this breach would not have come to light without the instrumental submission of a protected disclosure containing time-stamped internal logs and managerial correspondence. Instrumental, not heroic, not whistleblower of the year, just instrumental. That's all I ever wanted. Proof, not praise. The cherry on top came late that afternoon. A company-wide memo from the GC, straight from the legal dragon's mouth. Subject, internal reporting protocols. It read, all employees are reminded of their responsibility to document and report security concerns through the appropriate channels, including those outside their designated scope if risk to systems, clients, or contracts is suspected. No one should be discouraged from doing so, including lanes they weren't told to stay out of. Word for word, including lanes they weren't told to stay out of. He didn't write that sentence by accident. He was quoting the thing that nearly killed them. I closed my laptop. No slow clap, no victory speech, no triumphant return, just a small hard smile and the soft click of a power button. I didn't want revenge. I wanted the truth to be unavoidable. And now, the building was still standing, sure, but the rot had been exposed like nerve under a pulled tooth. I never wanted to burn the place down, but I did make sure the matches were labeled properly. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.